Hey PC World fans, Adam here with GPU expert Brad Charkis.
Hey Adam.
And we have a weekly podcast called The Full Nerd that you can tune into by subscribing here on YouTube or wherever you can get your podcasts. But during the show, we field a lot of questions.
Yep.
And one of them that we get a lot is, what's the best GPU if you're gaming at 4K?
That's actually a great question because 4K monitors and 4K gaming in general has really come down in price in recent years. 4K gaming used to just cost an arm and a leg. You'd have to get the highest end graphics card to even think to start to be able to play at 4K resolution, and even then you'd have to make visual compromises. That's no longer the case. You can find 4K monitors going for as cheap as $200 or $300 sometimes, which is great. If you're looking to get a more affordable graphics card that can kind of power those, you might need to dial some things down to high, maybe some of the more strenuous settings down to medium, but you can get it working pretty good. You'd want to look at some of the higher end options that are also good for 1440p, such as the Radeon RX 5700 XT, which is $400 from AMD. There's also the $500 GeForce RTX 2070 Super. The XT is almost as fast as the RTX 2070 Super, but the 2070 Super has ray tracing, so if that's a concern to you, it's worth considering. Like I said, you're going to have to sacrifice some of the visual quality, but if you tinker with settings, you can get a lot of games running at 4K 60 with high graphics details. But if you really want to take as much advantage of a 4K 60 monitor as possible, if you want to have everything running on Ultra or close to it, there's always going to be some games you have to turn down a little bit extra. The only real option, because AMD doesn't play up in this space, the XT is its most powerful card, would be the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2080 Super, which costs $700.
Okay, that's still a pretty penny.
It's only about 12% faster than the 2070 Super, but that extra 12% makes a big difference when it comes to being able to, move a graphics setting from high to ultra or get you from 50 frames per second to 60 frames per second. It doesn't sound like much. It's costing you an extra $300, $250. But it gets you a much better 4K 60 gaming experience.
Okay, well, what about some of these newer 4K monitors that are enabling high refresh rate and HDR and G-Sync and all that sort of fun stuff?
Yeah, those are pretty cool. We start seeing those coming out over the past year or so. I actually have a G-Sync HDR monitor at home. It's
Jealous.
4K, 144 hertz, HDR, 10-bit color. They're gorgeous. And you can still use something like the 2080 Super with that. That being said, you would still only get about 60 frames per second depending on the game. So if you really want to take the most advantage of it and you've already invested $1,000 plus, maybe $2,000 on a really nice high-end monitor like that, the real option that you want to go get is the $1,200 RTX 2080 Ti from NVIDIA.
Okay.
$1,200 is a lot to spend on a graphics card. It'll burn a hole in your wallet. It'll also melt your face. It's by far the fastest thing I've ever come close to testing. It'll get you well over 60 frames per second in the vast majority of games, even with ultra graphics settings, which is something that was unbelievable just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
You won't max out the monitor in most games. If you're playing modern games, if you have all the visuals cranked, even with the 2080 Ti, you probably won't hit 144 hertz. But you'll get the most that you can out of it.
Well, is an option to maybe stack those cards up and add a dual GPU setup in order to achieve those high frame rates?
It is an option, but you do not want to do it. That used to be my go-to advice. In recent years, though, the industry has really moved away from multi-GPU support. You need the driver to work to be able to get that running. Even if you have a driver that says, hey, we support SLI, we support Crossfire, whatever, it wouldn't be Crossfire at this level. The game needs to support it, and more games just aren't even bothering these days.
That's a bummer.
Even AMD and NVIDIA are dialing it back. NVIDIA will only support SLI, so multi-GPU setups in 2-card configurations. It used to go up to 4. And AMD officially killed Crossfire. So the new Radeon 5700 XT I mentioned in the beginning, you can't crossfire that whatsoever.
So you got to kind of get the best single card that you can for your money at this point.
Yep, that's the go-to advice. That's the golden advice for the last 5 or 6 years or so, and it's going to continue to remain that way.
Well, is it an option to maybe find a really good deal on last generation's high-end card, the 1080 Ti?
That card would be pretty good for 4K 60 gaming. It would be akin to like the 2070 Super, a little bit faster than the 2070 Super.
Okay.
So you would be able to play a 4K 60 with some graphics, you gotta dial them back. The thing is, I'm not against used PC parts. It depends on the type of part that it is, though. If you're buying something like a used processor, there's not much risk because it's just a piece of metal that sits there. Graphics cards have a lot of moving parts, and they are super easy to overclock the snot out of. So I think there's a lot of inherent risk in buying used in graphics cards. A lot of people swear by it. Before I drop several $100s on something, I want to be there as little risk as possible, and I think it's just real risky to buy used graphics cards, especially something like that. If you can find one for $250, $300, something like cheap like that,
Get two.
yeah, get to
And share it with me.
But even still, I would rather buy something like the $400 Radeon RX 5700 XT and even get a little bit less gaming performance out of it than I would spend $400 on used GTX 1080 Ti.
Well, and also, if you're going to spend this amount of money, and you're gaming at 4K, you probably want to get ray tracing, the RTX cores, right? I mean, it plays the best in these higher card configurations. So
it depends what you're talking about, because if you're looking at 4K 60, your starting options could be the Radeon 5700 XT, and that's only $400, and it comes real close to the 2070 Super. Not quite as fast, but real close for $100 less. The 2070 Super obviously gives you ray tracing capabilities, and all of these high-end cards give you ray tracing capabilities because they're all from NVIDIA, and NVIDIA's pushing that real hard. In general, if you really believe in ray tracing and you think it's going to take off and you want to get as much performance in ray tracing as possible, the more expensive the card you buy, the faster it'll go in everything, including ray tracing. They have more dedicated hardware for ray tracing.
that makes sense. All right. Well, the last question I got to ask, just because I got to ask, is that should anyone ever buy the RTX Titan that's available?
No, never. Not nobody. Not never. No gamer should.
Gamer, not
gamer
no
should,
gamer.
Yeah,
Oh,
no
okay.
gamer should. If you're doing data center stuff and you want to spend $3,000 on something that has more memory but very little extra gaming performance compared to the 2080 Ti, then it might make sense for that, but gamers should not ever buy it. It looks nice, though.
Right, yeah, it does look pretty. Well, thank you for answering this question. And like I said, you can ask questions all day long on The Full Nerd. Join our Discord, subscribe to us on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'll try to answer as much as we can. So before I go, I do want to mention that you have an awesome article on PCWorld.com that you're continually updating, correct?
Several times a month. Guides to the best graphics cards for gaming specifically.
Awesome.
So.
I'll link to it in the comments down below. And thank you, Brad, for taking the time to answer this question.
Yeah,
I
no
really
problem.
Appreciate it.
Loved it.
And thank you for being there. We'll see you later.